Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Spilly, and welcome to the inaugural edition of The Cost of the Pipeline. This is a radio version of my blog that I have called thecostofthepipeline.com. What we're going to do with the show is basically discuss many kinds of issues about the PennEast Pipeline. The blog started about in February 2015. What happened back then is I live in West Amwell. I'm a resident there. We heard a lot about the pipeline then. All sorts of news articles and people concerned about it, so I started doing research. And some of the research was really interesting is that in this day and age, a lot of things are open and available on the internet. In particular, this pipeline had to be permitted by an agency called the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, and everyone's comments about this pipeline were available on FERC, and you could read what everyone thought about it. And whereas you might expect maybe one or two or a dozen of the usual people who complain about everything, what you saw was thousands of comments from all over the region and different landowners and people with small houses and farms. And there was all these impacts and all these stories that were so personal and so important that I was like, wow, we really need to get these out there so that people are aware of it, so that they understand, what their neighbors are going through. And it was sort of an epiphany for me. So I started the blog. The pipeline started moving around. They started moving the route quite a bit. Ironically, right after I started the blog, about 2 months later, it was moved right next door to my property, about 50 feet away. So that was kind of fun. But really, the blog was started out being about just the people and their stories. It morphed a bit over time and in talking about technical aspects. Is there a real purpose and need behind it? What are the safety issues? Ways that we're getting short-shifted in New Jersey where we have regulations saying we need certain safety levels. And PennEast is ignoring those and using very weak federal standards, et cetera, et cetera. But that's what the blog is about, and that's what we're going to try to echo here on the radio show today. So I want to welcome Lorraine Crown from Holland Cap. Is it Holland?
It is Holland. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Great. I'm glad you're here. We also have Eric Richard, who is a candidate for West Amwell Township Committee, along with two other Democratic people. And Eric.
Mike, thank you for having me.
Great. So today's show, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk a little bit about where we're at with PennEast today, some recent things that have happened. Lorraine is going to talk about our sort of special topic, which is unions, pipelines, and elections. We're going to go into some of it's not as easy a topic as some people might think. It's not really black and white. There's a lot of nuance there, and she's going to walk us through how unions are involved with PennEast, what some of the topics are, and where we need to be sympathetic with the union point of view, and where we may be in opposition. But I think we'll get a lot of good color there. And last, we're going to talk about the West Amwell election specifically. There have been some recent allegations from myself and others about large donations to the Democratic campaign. We're going to go into that in detail, and also, what the Democratic platform is around the pipeline. And we'll have Eric here to rebut anything he disagrees with and put in his 2 cents, and, we welcome his comments.
And mostly support the vast majority of what we're discussing.
Okay, great.
Oh, absolutely. We know that.
That's wonderful. And we are all friends here, and we're trying not to get personal. And, this is a touchy topic, but, we'll try to keep it above board and professional. So first off, I just want to talk about where we're at with PennEast. There was something called the draft EIS that was issued in July. That's an environmental impact statement, which is a very large study the federal government's required to do on any large project like this. There was thousands and thousands of comments that came out about it. Almost all of them were in opposition of the pipeline and very critical of it. On the very last day of the comment period, in September 12th, there was a huge outpouring of around 700 comments where people were doing all their studies, getting all their information. The very last day, they got the info in there. And it amazed everybody, pro and con, as to who was commenting and what they said. I just want to highlight a few of them. The big one in my mind was New Jersey Rate Council. The Rate Council is an advocate for consumers in the state that basically is an intermediary between regulated public utilities and the various consumers and businesses. They sort of help the middleman not get screwed by the utilities. And the New Jersey Rate Council had just an absolute smackdown on PennEast. And they had a litany of issues. They said there was no action alternative considered. It was a few paragraphs thrown in there that wasn't serious analysis.
I think we should explain what that is. Actually, I don't think a lot of people know that the FERC and PennEast are required to examine an alternative called no action. which means that what would be the consequences if the pipeline were not built? And so Penn East basically devoted, what was it, about 4 paragraphs to that?
Yeah.
When there are many, both alternate and no action points of view that they could have taken.
Right. So the law, basically, there was laws that were initiated in the 70s that said the federal government has to seriously consider the environment and the impacts of any large project. And in the case of something like Penn East, you have to look at what would happen if you didn't build it at all. What are the positives and negatives? What happens if you build it? What if you had these other plausible alternatives, other routes or other sources of fuel or other energy routes entirely? And you're supposed to very seriously consider it. It's called a hard look is the standard that the courts have upheld. And what the Rate Council and many other people said was there was no hard look at the no-build option. It was 4 paragraphs. It was very dismissive, and it wasn't what you'd call an analysis at all.
And specifically that FERC took the position that no build or an alternative action would not meet the demands of the project, of the applicant. And so that's such a circular argument. I mean, if we don't build the project, then we can't build the project, and that's a reason for building the project.
That's right, and that dovetails into the other thing they brought up was the actual demand for the project. You would expect, detailed analysis, models, projections, market studies, government projections, things like that. There's none of that. They said that we have people who are buying 90% of the product on the pipeline. That's why we're building it, and we can't go with no option because in that case they wouldn't get the gas.
Right, and the 90% of the people that are buying the gas are mostly the owners of the pipeline.
Yeah, 3/4 of the actual shippers, it's called, are actually the owners of the pipeline, so they're selling the gas themselves. And again, it's a circular argument saying we need it because we say we need it. There was no analysis at all. It was very disappointing. And last, the Rate Council said that this is a regulated utility that's doing this. There's certain rules they have to follow. They also get certain benefits, so they get guaranteed rates. They said in this case, where there's no proven demand, the no action alternative is completely empty, we're guaranteeing them a 14% rate of return. And the Rate Council actually said it's like winning the lottery for the owners of the pipeline company. This is 2016 where interest rates are near zero still. Who in this world gets a guaranteed 14% rate of return? And really the Rate Council had a great submission there and really was one of the first times that an actual agency stepped up and said, we don't need this project. Some other ones was the U.S. EPA. They've been on the offensive against many pipelines, so they've been simultaneously commenting on a lot of pipelines, including Penn East. They said that this application, like many others, was incomplete. You don't have survey data. You don't have detailed analysis. They said that greenhouse emissions, there's new standards where Lori can go into more details, but there's new standards that you have to talk a lot more about greenhouse emissions. There's nothing in there about that at all. There was no cumulative impact that was seriously considered. It was, again, rubber stamped, where they said throughout the state of New Jersey and Pennsylvania, there's no impacts from anything anywhere.
There's no other projects that would impact this project.
Yeah.
When there's projects everywhere.
So at the end of the day, the EPA rated it, they called it environmental objections, insufficient information, which sounds not that bad, but from the EPA, that's sort of like a slap in the cheek. It's a very strong wording from them. And again, they've done this with many other pipelines. New Jersey DEP, they weighed in. Now, DEP, you have to remember that they're under the Christie administration. At the top level, they have Christie appointees, and that they have an obvious pro-pipeline sort of stance. But despite this, DEP is actually using very strong words against Penn East. They actually called the application insulting. They said it was incomplete, it wasn't acceptable, and they said, don't bother to apply. They say, if you apply with this information, in 30 days we're going to reject it. We're going to stamp it saying you don't have enough information.
As it relates to DEP, sort of, but the route more specifically, there is such problems with the route itself because the environmental resources that it would damage are so significant that, in fact, there is still not a route that's settled, for example, in Holland Township. They have filed a route for Holland Township, and yet we still have surveyors out there looking at different routes, and we know that New Jersey DEP wants them out of the route that they're that they have currently proposed in the application. And so this is now 13 months since they filed their application formally. They're supposed to file with a route and an alternate, and they have not yet decided on a route, especially through areas that are of high environmental consequence, like in Holland. And this puts landowners and residents on pins and needles, never knowing who's going to be impacted, or we still don't know who might be impacted.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting that after the GIS comment period, Penny's filed another 33 route variations.
And they changed 2 miles worth of route in Holland.
Yeah,
that's a quarter of the route in Holland.
And what it really shows to me and a lot of other people is that there is no good route.
That's right.
They've been sort of vibrating back and forth between many different areas. Sometimes landowners are told they're impacted, they're not impacted, they're impacted, they're not impacted. It's like a yo-yo going back and forth. And really what it's showing is that they haven't found any good route. There's objections everywhere they go. And they really need to wake up that, in this entire area, it's not a NIMBY issue that I don't want it in my town or my backyard. It's that there just is no good route at all. And when you couple that with the lack of need, it's doubly damning for the project and insulting to the people that are being affected by it.
Yeah, I think that's an important point that we might take a second on, that we get accused by the industry side of either being NIMBYs, which means not in my backyard, or of being tree-hugging extremists. And, it's easy to throw us in a bucket like that. My success as a business person depends on a strong economy, and it depends on people making enough money that they can afford my services. So I need a strong economy. I also need to be able to turn my lights on, right? So if there was a project that was necessary and a project that, was going to benefit the communities through which the project was going to run, I might think differently about it. But this project is not that project. And that's the basis of our resistance, that, I don't oppose anybody's right to do business, but because I do business, but I'm not going to go out and take people's land to do my business, which is what the pipeline is proposing to do.
I agree, and I think the support, particularly in New Jersey, has been really phenomenal and surprising to a lot of people, and that it's bipartisan. It's not about parties at all. Republicans, Democrats, extremists, non-extremists, it really doesn't matter. Everyone agrees that this really isn't needed, and the choices they're making are incredibly bad choices. Actually, one of the things I had on my list was New Jersey, the State Agricultural Development Committee, which is in charge of farmland and open spaces related to farm and agriculture. They were a little wishy-washy for a while, but they've firmed up their stance tremendously, and they actually came out and said, you're specifically targeting our preserved farms. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's very clear that your route is basically like an arrow pointing, let's hit this preserved farm and this one, and you're doing it because it's easy and because it's cheap, and that's against our direct charter as preserving agriculture in the state of New Jersey, the most densely populated state in the Union. Water companies have weighed in as well. The Rosemont Water Company in Delaware Township, Stockton area, Suez United Water, they've said that Penn East has either ignored them or not even known that they existed for a long time. Very significant impact to people's drinking water here in Lambertville and the Stockton area. And Penn East has come out more or less as incompetent, that even when they're told in great detail, you're causing this impact, they ignore it. It doesn't get into their documentation, and we pay the price for it. So, really there was tremendous outpouring that came out from September 12th. It was really tremendous, but things haven't stopped then. There is a lot of news since then. Sort of the day after the comment period closed, Penn East went back on the offensive. They'd been quiet throughout the entire comment period. They were good little boys and girls and said, we don't want FERC to have any excuse to ding us, so they're very quiet. The day after that, there was a litany of literature going out to landowners, with a lot of marketing fluff about how wonderful they are. And there's pictures of, babies and, wounded kids and veterans and all the usual memes that you can think of saying, Penn East will benefit everyone, and your puppies will jump higher, and your kids will be cured of all their ills, and everything will be wonderful if we allow Penn East. There was forced land valuations where they said, we've hired a real estate company, and they're going to come and they're going to value your land, whether you like it or not. If you don't allow them on your property, they're going to look around and they're going to poke wherever they can, and they'll just come up with a finger in the air sort of evaluation.
And we should note that some of our communities, for example, Kingwood, really stands strongly with their residents on stuff like this. They were not having it that Penn East was going to stand in the middle of the road, or that this real estate subcontractor of Penn East was going to stand in the middle of the road and attempt to do assessments. It's such an outrageous idea for a landowner to have to stand there and feel like they are being evaluated without any power to do anything about it.
Oh, yeah. And it's across all the towns. The different towns have different responses. Every town agrees that the amount of surveying against landowners' property is egregious, that it's harassment. Some of them are more aggressive than others. Kingwood is a great example of them being very aggressive and defending their rights. People also own the land out to the center line of the roadway, so the roadway is just an easement for the town. I think West Amwell has a similar ordinance now that they can't survey from the road, with the idea that roads are for public use, and private surveying is not a public use. It's private use, it's commercial. The example I use is you can't pull onto Hewitt Road where I live and set up a taco truck and just start selling tacos. It's not, the road isn't for that purpose. You can't block the road just because you want to. And people need to understand, too, that Penn East is not a utility right now. Penn East is just an LLC that has no special rights.
That's right, private corporation.
Yeah, they're just a private corporation. If FERC gives them approval, they will become a utility. But at this point in time, they're a nobody. And people should realize they don't have any rights. They can't come on your property. They can't do anything because they don't have any special privileges at this point. And then on top of all these other things, they brought in more construction roads. So one of the things people don't realize is that their initial maps didn't include all these adjacent construction roads where they need to get to the right-of-way where there are no existing roadways. And they basically said, okay, maybe it's a couple of years into the process and it's after the DIS period, but we have some construction roads, and a great local example is Stymiest Road, which is basically, it goes between West Amwell and Lambertville. It goes up a very steep slope, connecting the Suez site with Quarry Street, which is a tiny, tiny street. And as it turns out, Stymiest is actually the location of the last untouched road since the Revolutionary War, where George Washington marched his troops from Lambertville to the Battle of Monmouth. And it's documented, and there's a placard there exactly where Penn East wants to go, saying this is the last road that has not been touched or marked in any way since Revolutionary War times. And Penn East wants to build there. So that's sort of where we're at, is that, we had great response from agencies, but Penn East still coming at people and still ignoring everyone's objections. And, we still have to dig in. We still have to fight.
And being really uninformed about basic stuff, exactly as that example,
Yeah.
of the road here in Lambertville. I mean, how can you not know that if you're going to build an access road in there, what you're crossing?
Yeah, I mean, I tell people over and over again that, FERC and Penn East are not local. Penn East is mostly from Pennsylvania, at least from the project management side. FERC is in Washington, D.C. They don't know that the Revolutionary War was here, that they have no idea. They don't know about, they think this is basically Kansas, that everything is flat and you can see as far as you can see, and there's no structures, there's no history. It's just open farmland and nothing else.
That's right.
They have no idea how special and unique this area of Hunterdon and Mercer County are, and it's our jobs to let them know and to tell them that. And if only the process was easier, that we could actually do that in an equitable way. But that's a discussion for another time.
But we really want to thank the more than 3,200 people from our area, both in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, who submitted comments to the docket during the draft environmental impact statement public comment period. We're not sure that we have unprecedented support on the docket, but we certainly...
But it's up there.
It is. It's definitely up there. And, I mean, our communities just rock.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think the support against Penn East is unprecedented if you look at it across all the different things that opposition is doing and how many people are meeting for the first time because of this. Mm-hmm. And people who you wouldn't think were allies suddenly are allies because of it. So, if there's a silver lining in the cloud, is that Penn East has brought enormous numbers of people together that never would have gotten together otherwise. So, the community has been great, and it's really demonstrated how special this whole area is. So I want to segue a little bit now. while we have time before the break, to talk a little bit about the union angle.
Okay.
So I want Lorraine to jump in, and feel free to jump in too, Eric, since
Thank you, Mike.
you obviously have some union experience.
So I should also disclose, I am not currently a union member, but there was a time in my earlier career where I was a chief shop steward for a large Teamster shop in eastern New Jersey and New York. So I understand many sides of the union issue, and we'll preface this conversation mostly between Mike and Eric by a little bit of background as to what happens. So we have this voter conundrum that occurred to me just yesterday as Mike and Eric were having a discussion on our large Facebook group. And if anybody wants to check us out, it is Stop PennEast Pipeline on Facebook. And the discussion centered around union contributions to candidates, Democratic candidates. We know that, and I'm going to be very broadly general here, I mean unfairly general, that unions are very large contributors to Democratic races, and I believe they are, in a national sense, the largest contributors to Democratic races. Having said that, we also know that many unions are in favor of PennEast, and some of those unions have stated so on the docket. So the Democratic voter, or the PennEast voter, or just the voter, has to contend with this thought process of, I want to vote for this individual who is against PennEast, but many of the people who are supporting him with funding are the very unions that want to build PennEast. So how does both the candidate and the voter contend with that conflict? And what the voter is really afraid of, in my experience, is a situation such that we have currently with, for example, Congressman Lance. So Congressman Lance has come out very strongly in support of us in terms of sending staff to hearings, to our public meetings, submitting comments to the docket, and in fact he has requested support for the evidentiary hearing that was requested by New Jersey Conservation Foundation and the Watershed. So that's a very strong verbal commitment to us, and we appreciate it. At the same time, however, he is sponsoring legislation to fast-track pipelines, and PennEast would be impacted by that legislation. So we find out, for example, that he is accepting money from Spectra and another one of PennEast's partners. I don't remember the other. Mike, do you remember what the other?
Which one?
PennEast one of the other PennEast partners that Lance is accepting money from. It's Spectra and one of the others for his current campaign. It's immaterial.
No, I'm not sure off the top of my
yeah,
head.
And so we see that pipeline influence in Lance's actions when his words are different. And so that is really the problem. So how is a candidate going to prove to the voter that they can objectively accept money that comes through the ticket and still remain committed to a very strong and very consistent and opposition to the pipeline? And one of the people that came to mind today, and I have not consulted with him, so sorry, Kevin, but I'm taking a guess on this. We have Kevin Kaczynski down in Hopewell. Mm-hmm. Okay, he's a Mercer County Democrat, and so he came in on that ticket where all the Democrats won that year. And so you have to believe that as a Mercer County Democrat that there was also union money finding its way into his candidacy. However, he is aggressively anti-pipeline, persistently anti-pipeline. He now has a tenure of action, which is, unambiguously anti-pipeline, anti-PennEast. And so we do see examples of where a candidate is likely being funded by some of this more concerning money, and yet really standing their ground. And so that's kind of the background for the issue that we want to finish today's show with. And now I'm going to turn it over to the two of you to duke it out.
Okay. I appreciate that intro. And I've said before that, I'm somewhat anti-union from my own background. It's not rabid. It's considered. I do think that unions do a lot of good in the world. Certainly they were formed with the best intentions. And there's many examples where you can find that they've really made a positive difference. I happen to think personally that, the bad outweighs the good. But there certainly are good things that come out of them. We should always keep that in mind. And, I think before we go on the break I would always say, if you're against unions, let's say, don't hate the player, but hate the game. Is that never take it out on union workers or union people. If you disagree with their policies, that's your certain right. You certainly take it out on the union workers if they happen to be striking somewhere or if they happen to be protesting at a venue and you disagree with them. Don't get in their face. Don't start a scene. It's not productive. They're there to basically assert their rights. We're there to assert our rights. I think everybody needs to keep that in mind. And that they're fighting for their jobs, just like everyone else is fighting for their own jobs. They may be coming from a different point of view, but it is important to realize that people are not demons. They're not evil. They just have their point of view in their own unique situation, and that always has to be, part of the discussion.
And I always find, because I speak to labor at all of our hearings, anywhere I see them, I speak to them. They are completely understanding of our point of view, especially when we get down to the economics of it. They believe that their technical training allows them permits them to protect the environment. But when we get down to the economics of it, they really do hear our point of view about eminent domain. And so I think that we have more common ground than oppositional ground, and those guys just want to put food on the table like we do.
Yep. So, I think that's a great point of view. I think when we come back, we're going to talk specifically about West Amwell and the elections there and how unions play a part in that.
You're listening to Joey Novick, and I am the host of Punchlines in Politics. We air live every Monday, 7 p.m. right here on WPANJradio.com, and that show repeats at 6 each day. And we have some of the best people from politics and some of the most fantastically funny comedians in New Jersey. So please listen to me, come in the studio, and enjoy the show. Joey Novick, Punchlines in Politics.
Hey, this is Jack Furlong, host of The Strike Zone on PANJ Radio, the sports talk show, live on Monday at 12 o'clock, where we talk about local and national sports-related topics. We take your phone calls in the last half hour, trying to get your opinion about some controversial things that goes on in the world of sports. Here's a quick clip from the show that aired on Monday. A lot of people commenting on that site about the line judge, Sarah Thomas, who is the first female official hired by the NFL. Without saying it directly, many of the comments had an air of how women don't have a place in football officiating. They called her a horrible official in so many ways. And I want to quote some of the posts here. A guy posting by the name of From the Sidelines posted, having never played and having little experience, she has no clue. A guy posting under the name of TQNYG posted, she is the most incompetent I have ever seen up close. And the worst comment, which will really spark it, is posted by a guy named Will Johnson, and he posted, Sarah Thomas was hired so that more women would watch the games, just like the whole fake breast cancer awareness crap.
Ooh.
Yeah. Listen.
Ooh. Going for the jugular there,
Oh, my God. Listen, all officials are human and will miss calls or make mistakes, okay? Is she an unfortunate target for being a woman in a predominantly male profession in sport? Yeah, probably. Check out the archive page if you missed it for an instant replay at PANJradio.com. We'll see you Monday on The Strike Zone.
Hi, Vinny V here, host of In the Green Room, every day at 10 a.m.
Best of Shows archives. Starting at Tuesdays at 5 p.m., a new live show that runs all week. Interesting guests. Our subjects are health, environment, spiritual, political, musical, you name it. You'll find it here on In the Green Room. Check out our schedule on panjradio.com, 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Peace out.
I look around me, see that I found me in the eyes of people I don't.
Hey, I'm Deirdre Anderson with Delish Catering.
And I'm Laura Mangone from Chambers Walk Cafe and Catering.
And we'd like you to join us on Food for Thought, where what do we talk about, Laura? We talk about restaurants, we talk about
Pet
recipes,
peeves,
pet
food.
peeves, bitchy hostesses,
All sorts of food-related items.
all sorts of
Tune
food
in.
stuff, and sometimes not so much food stuff. We go off on segues, but we have a lot of fun, don't we?
Absolutely.
So join us on Food for Thought.
panjradio.com, 1 o'clock weekdays.
And welcome back to the Cost of the Pipeline on PNJ Radio. Thanks for tuning in with us. We're here with Eric Richard and Lorraine Crown. We're going to talk now a little bit about West Amwell Township and the election going on there. So, Eric, I've given you a little short shift on time, so I'm going to speed this up on my end. So in West Amwell, it's sort of a big change for us in terms of government. We're going from 3 township committee people to 5. A very big change. And there's 3 seats that are up for grabs. There's a 2-year seat and 2 3-year seats. And it's been Republican administration for a while there now, but the Democrats are coming in very strong. They have a very strong campaign against Republicans this year. And we can see it that people, there's emails are flying and Twitter things, and people are talking over their fence and at ball games, and you mention it. It's a very, very hot issue in our little tiny town of, I think we have about 3,800 people, 1,100 households. So it's a small town, but it's a really big deal to us. And one of the big things that came out was that the Democratic campaign had a very large war chest that surprised people. It's up to about $45,000 now, and that the majority of the contributions were from unions. I think around 75% were from unions, all around New Jersey as well as one in New York State. A number of the unions seem to be pro-Penn East, which I know Eric disagrees with, but from my own research, there was about 53 or percent or more of the unions were either explicitly pro-East or Penn East, or implicitly so through their union parents. So many of the actual unions were mentioned in the DIS and other Penn East documents. Others have been present at scoping hearings, being somewhat intimidating to people that were there. But it's a real concern for people that there's a perception that, one person I heard said that unions are trying to buy the election in West Amwell, to which many people say, why would you want to buy anything in West Amwell? The other part is, Penn East is one of the biggest issues in the township, and having a set of candidates come in that are accepting a lot of money from pro-Penn East unions is a really big deal. So this has been a very big issue for us. I have some supporting material here, but I won't go into it right now. What I want to do is give Eric some time to actually, talk about his view on the pipeline, rebut anything he feels like rebutting, and I want to give you a solid 10 or 15 minutes at least.
Good.
Not
Excellent.
more. So,
thank you,
you're
Mike.
up.
And first and foremost, I just want to thank everyone for inviting me in today. I think before I get into the dollars and cents, Mike, which I think is where you want me to go, I was hoping to talk a little bit first about the Penn East issue itself.
Sure.
For a lot of folks, this is personal. And Mike, you mentioned that earlier. It's going 50 feet from your house. If you go where I live, if you stand on the Penn East route, and if you look left, just over where it crosses 179, you can see the back of my house. Mm-hmm. It's probably about a half mile away, I would say. And then if you turn to the right, you see the West Amwell Elementary School. Again, probably less than a half a mile from the proposed route. And so I think a lot of folks, if you're in Lambertville, if you're in West Amwell, if you're driving 179, you might see a cute little girl up on the billboards there that I have promoting our campaign. And that cute little girl is my daughter. She's 4 years old, and she is about to go to West Amwell Elementary School next year. And so politics is politics, and family is family. And we need to separate those issues, I think, and get a sense of the man or the woman that's running for office and what's really important to that man and that woman. And so I think what I mentioned, and if folks would like to, they can, of course, go to my Facebook page, which is West Amwell Proud, and check out my rebuttal word for word. I know, Mike, you posted on yours as well. I appreciate that. It's important to get a sense of priorities for folks, right? And for anyone to insinuate that I am in some way for sale on the issue of Penn East, and that the health and the safety of my family is going to be compromised because of a contribution, frankly, hits me in a bad spot. And so I wanted to bring that to the attention of folks first and foremost. The second thing I really wanted to discuss was a little bit of my background. I am a unabashed labor supporter. I'm an employee of the state AFL-CIO. The state AFL-CIO has 13 million members throughout the entire country. They are the largest labor organization in the entire country, the largest labor organization here in the state of New Jersey, and they have quite a diverse number of folks and sectors of the economy that we represent. And the construction trades in particular are one portion of that. And so my background is not just as a employee of the AFL-CIO, but I came into being a union member myself through the American Federation of Teachers. It's the higher ed union. So I taught at Rutgers University for many years as a lecturer, and that's how I became an AFT member, American Federation of Teachers member, and I continue to be an AFT member now, and I continue to be an advocate for labor issues throughout the state. I think if you talk to any legislator throughout the state and you ask them which organization throughout the state or what are the top organizations throughout the state have the most progressive representation throughout the state of New Jersey, the AFL-CIO would be one of the top three that they would mention. And so again, I am proud of my union support. I'm proud of my union membership. I understand there's over 250 union members that live in West Amwell. I would encourage those union members to consider supporting myself and Bill Corboy and Mike Herron for Township Committee, and understand that I have democratic values. But above and beyond those democratic values is the very personal issue that all of us are confronting about what is best for our community, what is best for our families, and what is the direction of West Amwell going to be moving forward. And so that really, I think, takes center stage in my deliberation. And Lorraine, you were very eloquent in, I think, explaining how unions, not just unions, but I mean, I think you could look at a whole host of organizations, whether it's business groups such as the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, these organizations are huge, and they represent a variety of interests. And as a union member, it's important to understand that I don't see eye to eye on every single issue that every single union supports or opposes. The unions have very diverse opinions. In fact, some unions have come out in opposition to pipelines. And so it's important to understand that there needs to be a balance, and there needs to be an understanding that unions are by far, as you mentioned, Lorraine, it's no surprise, unions are by far the biggest supporters of Democrats up and down the ticket throughout the entire country. And so the fact that I'm a union member, the fact that I work for the biggest union in the entire country, I don't think should come as, the fact that I'm a Democrat, I think should come at no surprise that the majority of my contributions are from labor. And so, you know, you talked about Leonard Lance, you've talked about a whole host of folks there, and trying to sort out the different positions is a difficult task. It's not an easy task. And again, it's not just on Penn East. I go through this on a day-to-day basis in my capacity on my day job working for the AFL-CIO. And I'll point out, we mentioned that you mentioned Leonard Lance. I'm friends with Bonnie Watson-Coleman, the congresswoman that represents a portion of the proposed pipeline route. Bonnie obviously has been in your corner, so to speak, on the pipeline in opposition to the pipeline. Bonnie's contributors are by far the biggest contributors to her campaign is organized labor. The subset of organized labor, which section of organized labor is the biggest contributor, Bonnie? The building and construction trades unions. So it needs to be understood that if you receive a contribution from a construction union, it doesn't necessarily mean you agree with them on each and every issue that their agenda entails. And so that's why I think it was so important. That's why I wanted to come on this radio show, to really try to say there's a lot more to it than trying to put together a screen snapshot of an election law enforcement commission contribution page and say that you're bought and paid for by organized labor, and then connect the dots and say, okay, well, you received union contributions, therefore you support Penn East. I would say unequivocally, if you look at our advertising, if you go to our Facebook page, the day it was launched, we mentioned on that Facebook page our opposition to Penn East. If you look at our mail, it mentions our opposition to Penn East. If you look at a host of different advertising that we've said, we've consistently said what our position is on Penn East.
I think that's fair enough, but I think that Lorraine's point, she mentioned that there's words and there are actions.
Exactly.
And, sometimes a party goes one way or an individual, other times they go another way, and we have great examples in both cases. So,
and
what
we
specifically...
do know how much money contributions influence an official's position. I mean, that's a huge national issue, right? So when we see the amount of money that, for example, that was really the thing that sort of got Mike's attention and then mine, that this amount of money coming into, I think that West Amwell is beautiful, and I describe it to people as largely a big field. And so when you see in excess of $40,000 coming in for a committee race, we both went, whoa.
Yeah, and maybe I could address that for a minute.
I think maybe why don't we look at the positive first, and then we'll talk about the contributions. What sort of actions would you take if you were elected in opposition to the pipeline?
Well, I mean, I think my campaign, frankly, I've been tried to the best of my ability to run an issue-oriented campaign, right? And where I saw an issue where myself and my running mates and my opposition agreed on the issue. Mike, we agree with 95% of what you're saying. Lorraine, I agree. My ticket agrees with 95% of what you're saying. And so I think we have a lot more in common than
we agree with that.
That we're disagreeing on. And so when I saw that my opposition and my slate of candidates had the same position on this, I put it on the shelf. I said, I am not going to try to invent a political issue to tear down my opposition if there is no there. A couple instances, folks brought things to my attention where they said, you should go after your opponents for this. I said, no, I'm not. I'm not going to go after them for that. Why? Because at the end of the day, even though there were some bumps in the road, they did the right thing. And so I'm going to take that issue and I'm going to put it on the shelf. I'm not going to turn it into politics. And so the one thing that I want to bring to everyone's attention is that, yes, I am a union supporter. I have been a lifelong conservationist. I remember when I was 17 years old, I was at a concert, and I saw the World Wildlife Federation had their table up, and I went over there and took $40 out of my pocket and made a contribution to them. I have supported, I want to say, close to a dozen environmental organizations over the course of my lifetime, attending activities, making personal donations, going to events. And this has been a passion. Ask my wife about this. Being an environmentalist has been a passion inside of me my entire life.
And we should note that Eric comes highly regarded by Jeff Tittle from Sierra Club and Micah Rasmussen,
and Sam Thompson as well.
And Sam
From Salazar
Thompson
Township.
as well, who all rushed onto this Facebook conversation to give you that cred.
And so I think in the big picture, we need to understand that unions and environmentalists are not diametrically opposed. In fact, they work together on a whole host of green energy initiatives to try to reduce our dependence on fossil fuel. There's a blue-green alliance. You mentioned the steel workers that I got a check from. The steel workers are hand-in-hand partners with the Sierra Club in trying to advance a green agenda. And so I hope the listeners understand that if you're pro-labor, you can also do the right thing at the local level. And that's really the message I want to try to get out to folks. And look beyond, look at who the people are and look at what they stand for their entire lives. And try to put that in context with receiving a contribution from someone that you may question what their intentions are.
Okay. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, and I did take definite note of the people who are endorsing you, and have talked about your environmental cred. And I think that's very good. I have to know at the same time that you didn't give me anything specific you'd actually do against the pipeline.
Okay.
So that's going to be something that worries the residents because they are very concerned with this. There's mixed reviews about what the Republicans have done to date, but they have done quite a bit against the pipeline. Well, and it is a concern that, I haven't heard anything specific at all.
Yeah, I don't think we actually gave Eric a big chance to do that. Yeah, go ahead.
So you'll feel free.
I understand your big concern, Mike. And like I said, you are the experts on Penn East. I am not trying to sit down here and say that I know all the answers to all of this. I defer to you. And that's why, Mike, it's very ironic, I think, that I actually knocked on your door the morning that you posted your blog article to pick up an anti-Penn East sign and to talk to you about how I could support your efforts. I just wanted to make sure the listeners know that. I also think it's ironic that several weeks ago I sent you a check, a donation for your efforts. And in the memo section, what did it say?
It said opposing Penn East, yes.
Didn't it say thank you, Mike, with an exclamation mark?
I don't know. Maybe it did.
Okay.
I don't remember.
And so
he was too overjoyed with getting the money.
And I did disclose that in our
you
website.
did, and I appreciate that. And so what am I going to do for Penn East? I have to get elected first.
Well, I hope you're not going to do anything for Penn East.
Yeah, right.
Well, right. So what am I going to do on the topic of Penn East? I need to get elected first. And I also understand that just like political campaigns, environmental groups, nonprofit associations, that's the money is the mother's milk of making any organization run.
Correct.
And the simple fact that I basically matched what the West Amwell Township Committee, the incumbents on the West Amwell Township Committee, gave to you, and it's been brought to my attention that I'm not sure when you got the contribution, but that, correct me if I'm wrong, that West Amwell Township Committee, prior to that $300 contribution, was the only community on the entire pipeline route that didn't allocate a single cent towards opposition efforts. Is that true?
I don't know if it's the only one. Certainly they didn't allocate any money for it. Okay. I think there were other, notably Lambertville, who's just off the route, definitely didn't. But yeah, it's actually one of the points of contention that we brought up with the current people.
And it was the question that was on my lips as you were just talking now. What about? As I will do this statement that West Amwell will allocate money toward experts or legal defense or.
Mike, if you don't mind me asking, when did they send you that check?
It was actually, it had to go through the process, so they started the process about 2 weeks ago.
Okay, 2 weeks ago. So I donated to you before the West Amwell Township Committee even made an effort to begin to fund opposition.
I think you did beat it by a few days at least, yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that when you ask, what do I do, or what are my intentions, I just want to ensure that the listeners understand that before this controversy even erupted, before it even came up, my campaign ticket, Core Boy, myself, Mike Herron, wrote you a check that basically matches, I think it's $50 less than what the entire township committee found was sufficient to help you in your efforts.
Mm-hmm. That's a fair point, and it is definitely a point of contention. We're talking about money. I think we should go back to talk about the donations a little bit. I get your point about There is a lot of different flying concerns and interweaving of different points of view from different unions, and it's hard to keep track of them all. I appreciate that, and there are a number of unions that contributed to you that certainly have nothing to do with Penn East and maybe even against it. There's several examples of that for sure. The red flag that came up to me is, I'm looking at this letter here, New Jersey State Building Construction Trades Council. A lot of AFL-CIO leadership is part of this council, and the vice presidents that are involved are also, they're the heads basically of the unions that contributed to you, and some of them that jump out is Electrical Workers 456, Joseph Egan. His union contributed $1,000. Joseph DeMarc from Sheet Metal Workers 5,000. Vincent Lane from Painter 711, that was $500. And then the sort of big elephant in the room, plumbers and pipe fitters in Local 9, Michael Maloney, $16,000. There's another one from Plumbers 24, I believe there's another $1,000. The grand total is, on the order of $25,000 or $26,000, more than half of your contributions. And they have this letter that's basically saying, on behalf of our 150,000 members, including all these unions, we're for Penn East. We think it's going to create jobs. We think it's going to be something that's needed and pump energy in. And it's a lot of things that Lorraine and I and many others have spent a lot of time debunking. And, I'll note that I've been at some of the scoping meetings in person. There were pipe fitters and sheet metal workers there, and their sort of modus operandi is to ring the room. They refuse to sit when FERC asks them to. And it's sort of an obvious intimidation ploy that there's all these union people that are there intimidating people. At South Hunterdon, when they had the initial meet and greet with Penn East, union workers reported actually blocking people from going from hallway to hallway. So this is what people think of. They sort of knee-jerk saying, I see unions responding to Penn East, and they're intimidating people. They're spending a lot of money to actually promote Penn East and related projects like the Garden State expansion. So that's what I initially see, and a lot of other people see is, wow, $25,000, $26,000, all from pro-Penn East unions that are clearly pro-Penn East. I know you've disagreed.
Okay, if I could, I am not disputing the letter you have in front of you. I don't want to go into the background of that organization. Those are my members. I support them, and Lorraine, you alluded to this earlier. They're trying to get work, right?
Right.
And so the fact that some of the construction trade locals have unemployment through the roof is a serious matter. And it goes into bigger pictures that I don't think we want to discuss right now in regard to trying to get the New Jersey's economy revived, et cetera.
Correct.
But
Unfortunately, we don't have the time. I would love to. Yeah.
my litmus test when I asked for a contribution was very simple. It went something along the lines of union leader X, is there any benefit to you, to your members from Penn East? And if that union leader said yes, I said, okay, thank you. I just want to let you know that I have a personal conflict with that, so I'm not going to be able to accept a contribution from you. If that union leader said, no, my members don't get a single job from Penn East, my members are firemen, my members are nurses, my members are transit union employees, I said, thank you for your contribution. I appreciate that. And so, Mike, you sent me actually a list I guess it's the Penn East page, labor and construction trade supporting it. There's a list of 11 unions on there. Of the 11, not a single one gave me a single cent, except the bottom one, which is the United Association of Journeymen and Apprentices of the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters. Mm-hmm. That is a national organization. They have 400,000 members throughout the entire country. They have 8 local unions here in the state of New Jersey. Of those 8 local unions, 2 of them supported my campaign with a contribution. Of those 2 local unions, not a single one of them will benefit whatsoever from Penn East proceeding.
Here's the
and
thing.
If I could just finish.
Okay.
Local 274, which is the union that would do the pipe work, has not contributed to my election. And so, yes, is United Association a parent organization of this? Yes. They're a parent organization of close to 200 local unions throughout the entire country. And so I just want to make sure that we're focused on West Amwell, that we're focused on Penn East and to, I think I said something along the lines of moving the goalposts. To say that these folks support the pipeline industry, yes, some of them support the pipeline industry. That's their prerogative, right? But we need to focus on who has contributed to my campaign here in West Amwell. Which unions are going to benefit from Penn East? Isn't that sort of what we're alluding to, Lorraine, where you said, how do you really find out where a candidate is at? Where is their heart? Where are they going to go in a direction? Do these types of funds influence a candidate's thinking?
Yes, exactly.
And so that's why my litmus test was so important. And that's why I returned a contribution that was sent to me by a union, the laborers union.
It was laborers?
Sent me a $500 contribution. I put it back in the envelope, and he's a friend of mine. And I called him up, and I explained to him. And you know what his reaction was? No hard feelings. That was it.
Yeah.
Right? And so when I got into this race, I sat down with my two running mates, Bill Corboy, Mike Herron, and I sat down with them and I said, listen, I'm going to raise some union money. I'm a big union supporter. We're in a race that is 2-1, Republican versus Democrat here in West Amwell. We are at a competitive disadvantage when it comes to registration. There has not been a Democrat in office in almost 10 years here in the state of in West Amwell. 6 of the last 7 elections, the Democratic Party hasn't even ran a candidate. Mm-hmm. And so some of my friends that are in this business said, Eric, you are crazy for trying to run in West Amwell. You are going to lose. And I said to them, I go, you know what? And I've said this when I go door to door. I've knocked on close to 400 doors so far in West Amwell. I've talked to over 200 people. When I go door to door and I talk to people, I say to them, it's time West Amwell residents have a choice. You haven't had a choice in the last 7 years. These incumbents have been completely unaccountable to the residents and the voters of West Amwell because no one has even run against them in 6 of the last 7 years. And I owe it to the residents of West Amwell to have an issue-oriented campaign that focuses on what's important to them and what gives them a choice at the local level. And that's why I decided to get into the race. The residents of West Amwell need to have an option.
We are short on time. I just want to bring up, I personally think that you're splitting hairs, that when a parent organization contributes, it doesn't count. If you get it from a local union instead, I think that's an important distinction. Okay. I'll also note that in the pre-filing process for Penn East, they listed everyone they initially contacted, both pro and against the pipeline. And one of the earliest organizations they contacted was UA Local 9, Plumbers Pipe Fitters, Michael K. Maloney. That meeting was on 9/9/2014. There's every indication that they've continued to be in contact with them. We have an assertion that they're not going to get any jobs. It's an assertion. I haven't seen any proof of that anywhere. As you said, some of these people have gone to your weddings. You know them personally. We can't verify any of that. What I can say is that publicly, there's every indication that UA Local 9 is pro-Penn East. Certainly their parents are. Certainly the sheet metal workers are pro-Penn East. Lots of the other organizations here, I think if we called them up and I said, are you pro-Penn East or against Penn East? What do you think they'd say?
I'm not disputing that. I'm not disputing that some of these unions are pro-Penn East. What I'm saying is I wanted to avoid a conflict of interest of anyone donating to my campaign. That's all I'm saying. And so if they said that they don't benefit, whoever's writing me a check does not benefit from Penn East, that is my due diligence. My due diligence is to avoid that type of perception, and I have gone out of my way to try to ensure that there has not been a conflict of interest on where I stand on Penn East.
Okay. I want to thank you. I do want to also note that Republicans were asked to come to this forum, and they respectfully declined. So we only have the one side to talk to here. I want to
we
thank
appreciate
both my
you.
guests.
I hope you have me
being
back.
on the hot seat.
Thank you. No,
I know this is difficult, Eric.
It was difficult, and we
That's quite
appreciate
all
it, but it came up as a big issue for the voter.
Of course, I understand.
Yeah.
And it is a central thing, and it's played out, up and down Hunterdon County and Mercer as well, is that, everything about Penn East is a big deal. Things about unions are going to get involved. But I really thank you for your point of view.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mike.
absolutely.
And Lorraine, thank you for everything you said.
Mike, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Lorraine.
And we're going to be back in 2 weeks at the same time. Thanks again for tuning in to The Cost of the Pipeline on PANJ Radio. If you have any ideas, please email me at thecostofthepipeline@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your ideas and thoughts and ideas for future shows. So thanks again, everybody, and see you soon.